The first part of the book is a re-examination of the traditional story of the historical rise of Islam. In this examination, I look at the story not so much as the record or documentary record of exactly what happened, but instead I ask, in the course of presenting this story, what parts of the story seem to reflect the concerns of later Muslims. That is, what parts of the story were written with maybe apologetical motives or to answer questions that were relevant at a later period, and what parts of the story, in fact, seem to be more reliable and present us with a historical basis for establishing the origins of Islam. Among the things this allows us to do is to discern the ways that Sunni Islam and Shia Islam developed particular and distinct narratives of Islam's origins. So that we don't see Shia Islam, for example, as a later sect that deviated from the purely preserved history of Islam's origins, or as somehow a corrupt or falsified view of Islam's origins, but rather just as Sunni Muslims developed a history of Islam's origins, so did Shiites. And I'll give a very brief description of this. To Sunni Muslims, when the Prophet died in 632, he didn't establish any plan for the assumption of leadership upon his death, but rather the leaders of the Islamic community, the young, nascent Islamic community, themselves chose the most worthy man, who was Abu Bakr, who became the first leader of the Islamic community, and the title given to that leader is Caliph. Sunni Islam goes on to say that Abu Bakr appropriately fulfilled this role as a leader, and above all, he was able to implement Islamic law, or Sharia, during his time, and passed on leadership eventually to Omar, who became the second caliph upon Abu Bakr's death, according to the traditional date 634, who passed it on to the third caliph, Uthman, and on to Ali, and on to the fifth caliph, and that we had a succession of political leaders. Shiites counter that, in fact, God had intended, from even before the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, that religious leaders, not just political leaders, religious leaders, be designated after the Prophet's death to carry on a political and religious leadership of the Islamic community, and that all of these leaders would come from the family of the Prophet Muhammad. The first of these was Ali, who was his cousin and his son-in-law. And the second and third were Ali's two sons, Hassan and Hussein. And there was a line of these 12 leaders. The approach of this book shows these two visions for Islamic origins as distinct reflections on Islamic origins by later communities, Sunni and Shiite, each of which are valid for their own interpretation of Islam's origins. But I don't privilege one or the other as somehow having the authentic memory of what really happened when Islam was born.